Let's get started. Our next speaker is Anuj Mubayi, and his affiliations are longer than his abstract. Okay, and he has a rich career, and I've asked him to talk to us at more length than he did last year's conference about that, and that journey that he will share with us is very important. Each of us has a story. Each of us has journeys. And I am quite confident that I could ask any one of you to give a half an hour, at least talk about a journey and what influences and who influenced you, anything from your mother to your Aunt Louise to a dean who fired you, and then you had to leave a school and you went to the best place on earth, and you think, why didn't I get fired earlier? And all time, I'm not suggesting I was fired, but I welcome Anuj to share this with us, and I'm going to turn the program over to you. He'll be speaking later tomorrow as well. So here you are, Anuj.
Thank you, Brian, very much. I really appreciate and honored to be part of your organization. And, last year I gave a talk and I realized what a marvelous work that you are doing for the community. We all do our own work and we are very busy in those own work. But for doing a community, it takes a lot of sacrifices and a lot of time commitments and efforts. And hats off to you. And I know what are the challenges one face in organizing an event, something like that, or a community like this, because I was at Arizona State University, a faculty tenure track faculty there. And I did a program there for a number of years, which was very successful, funded by National Science Foundation and National Security Agency. And I knew ins and outs that how difficult and challenge it is to bring the community of researchers and doing amazing flavor, like the outreach efforts that you are doing. So thank you, Brian, for making me part of it. I'm really privileged and honored in that. So today is actually, I was thinking, I saw such a wonderful talk by such an amazing group of speakers. Just last talk especially was Glenn's talk, and I know Glenn's very well, his work actually quite some time. I thought of presenting something different, and I discussed with Brian on that. And it's the reason I wanted to discuss is not because my journey is a special trajectory of professional trajectory special, but I also wanted to share what are the challenges I faced and how what are the things that I learned so that people can see or the students can see what are the good things that they can take from some of those experiences, if not all. So today I will be talking about, I was an applied mathematician, and now I am a research scientist at a healthcare institutions. And everywhere I'm doing similar type of work, if not exactly the same. So I will browse on those journey, those aspects that really made me a scientist in today's world. So I'm currently working for an organization called as IQVIA, which is one of the largest consulting organization in healthcare sector in the whole world. And I work for a division called as real world modeling solution, real world evidence solution. And here I am a part of a group called as Health Economics Group. So I'll explain these things in an example as we go in the forward. I'm also a distinguished fellow at the Intercollegiate Biomathematics Alliance, Illinois State University. That's what Brian was mentioning. Normal is the city in Illinois. So I do many activities with them. They do undergraduate research programs. They do give the conferences, webinar. There are multiple activities that are going through that. And then I'm also part of Ministry of Health in India, where I am helping them in a modeling decisions of health devices. How do you, distribute the budgets for the right kind of health devices for the country? And the institute is called as Kalam Institute of Health Technology, only one in the South Asia of this type that is dealing with the medical devices. And also with Satsai Institute of Higher Learning, which is an educational institute in India. So let me start with my, it is a random walk, literally. There has been many ups and downs in the life, but now when I see it back, the downs were actually, I am glad that it happened, because that led me to take risk in my life, and that led me to go in a beautiful trajectory. Now, before I go into everything, I want to tell that I was introduced to Brian last year by Dr. Aditi Ghosh from Texas A&M College Station. No, not College Station, sorry. One of the campus in Texas A&M. And that's how I know Brian, and Brian was kind enough to discuss with me on my work that I have been doing. So thank you, Brian, and thank you, Aditi, for that. My career starts with traditionally like doing some, like undergraduate work in physics, chemistry, and maths, but then also lucky to be part of one of the pioneer institute in India called as Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. And I did a pure mathematics work there. So I was not thinking of I would be doing work in health economics at some point of time later in my life. But that was an amazing journey. Indian Institute is a pioneer institute, and there was a cutting edge. So that is the time when I got different experience, and I will go deep into each one of it, but let me show you the trajectory. Then I did PhD at Arizona State University, followed by certain postdocs, and I'm selected journeys that I'm talking about. There are many other things behind the scenes. But Cleveland Clinic, which is a hospitals, I work for infectious disease department for it. Then Global Health Institute at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, followed by faculty position at Arizona State University in a human evolution and social change department. And finally, the couple of stint in industry at an institution called as Precision HOR, amazing institution. It was built by some of the faculty in health policies from University of Southern California, and IQVIA at present, which is working in helping healthcare pharmaceutical industries resolve the latest challenges. So it's a very different, if you see this chart, you see a very different applications areas, from pure mathematics to applied mathematics to global health, infectious disease, to healthcare, pharmaceutical right now, even in academia also. So academia industry. So there's lots of differences, lots of experience that I've gained. And I feel like at the time of transitioning, it was a very risky affair, and I was not sure whether I would be successful or not. And there are lots of challenges, but when I see it back now, I feel like, thank you, God, for making my trajectory the way it is. So let me show you why I say all these things. So this is some mathematical training early on, research training in my postdoctoral fellowship, academic profession experience in faculty position, and industry profession in the current stage. So let me talk about some first mathematical training. And Brian, if you could kindly help me give 15 minutes before my time completes, that would be really helpful. So mathematical training, so I did it at Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. This is a pioneer institute because, the pressure I faced there was amazing, the amount of workload. I mean, I was very young and kind of working on these topology problem, functional analysis, parallel computing, graph theory, very theoretical aspects. And I mean, I'm talking about the coursework basically here. And that kind of, so there was a professor who used to come and say, oh, today is your pop-up quiz. And it is a cloudy day, let's have a pop-up quiz. And it was, oh my God. And the whole class used to get 0 out of 10, for example, and it was so hard. So those challenges I'm glad that I went through that, and it has helped me face a lot of pressure. I mean, we need to understand the pressure as sometimes is good for us in our early career days. Although that time I was feeling very uncomfortable and lots of work to work with, but today I feel like that was very key aspects of my life. And then also in the final 2 semester, I got a chance to work with a cutting edge project, which is now become a national backbone of flying industry in India. It was called, I was working for jointly with the institution on a project with aeronautical industries. And they were developing a first time fuselage for a helicopter. At that time, there wasn't technology in India to build that thing. So they were designing that thing. And one of the big thing was to know where the vibrations are the most in the fuselage of the aircraft. So you need a differential equations of different sort behind the scenes to know exactly where the vibration, once the rotor will start, how the vibration will propagate and which place of the body would be the most, because you want to be careful where you put the certain type of instruments so that the vibration in the body doesn't affect that thing much sensory warning system, for example. So I used, it was first time industrial projects at an academic institution. I have no background in that. So typically I learned how to write manuals for giving it to the industry, for example. I programmed in Fortran 77, then Fortran 90, Fortran 77, 20 years back, 30 years back was very popular, basically. So, you know, and kind of, it was a programming language like C and C++ at that time. And so we have this physics model that captures the vibration. So these were differential equations behind the scene that were capturing the vibration propagation in the fuselage of the aircraft. So amazing experience I had. So I got many skill set while part of that. When I came for a PhD position, I got a chance to work in mathematical biology, applied mathematics, and mathematical biology. I worked on social problems of alcohol drinking in college community, where we were emanating. I mean, I was at Arizona State University, and Arizona State University, it was a big problem of alcohol drinking at that time. And so they wanted to know what aspects work. And there has been lots of control intervention, but none of them was making a huge dent on it. So we brought an idea, new idea from my dissertation. And that idea was, people think, you know, bars and restaurants are responsible for drinking at that time, at least. But it was not the case. Why it was not the case? You know, because people who goes to the bar have a pre-planned ideas. So, for example, they do a lot of social events on campus. On campus, drinking are not allowed, right? But you meet with other peers in food court areas, inside common areas, inside your class, and you discuss on that thing on many aspects, including having a party or having a drinking event, fraternity, sorority parties, for example, sports events. So those interaction lead to to later drinking behaviors. So we brought this idea about understanding social context that would eventually lead to potential for leading to heavy drinking at bars or restaurants, for example. So we were studying social context where the drinking is not there, but the influences are happening that is shaping up later on for drinking. So amazing project, and we used to imitate the campus and the people's behaviors in a computational system. So on the left side, you see an example of a map of a campus. On the right side, it is an imitation on a software called as NetLogo, where the buildings are made, the streets are made in the same way as the streets are made in the real life. and you were imitating how the classes are happening, how the students are moving to the social context, to the classrooms, to the different places. And there is a cycle in which the things are happening, and interaction, non-linear interaction are happening. If you think about from a differential equation, each individual has its own differential equations here, right? But so this is what, but this is a massive system where so many things, so many individuals are taking their individual action on their own behalf and optimizing it for their own self. But if you take it as a whole, as a college, there is an emergent behavior that is coming out of a drinking pattern from it. And so that was the idea behind the scenes. So we use these examples in a beautiful way. NetLogo was it was very useful software for that, but now there is lots of other softwares. Even you can do your own programming language. In NetLogo, all these pictures are easy to make, and people use in explaining differential equation a lot. Well, then what I did was also studied, this is in my PhD program, I also studied alcohol and cigarette behaviors, because we realized that sometimes cigarette context, smoking groups are causing the alcohol drinking also to lead that concept. So we wanted to bring that thing. But the problem was, where do you find the data? These models are useless if you if you are applying for a policy decision and you do not have sufficient data, right? So then what we did is, you see on the left-hand side, there is it's a flyer for social survey. So I asked my undergraduate students to do work on carrying out social surveys. So social surveys on how often they visit to some of the social contexts, sports event, fraternities, and different variety of questions. And then, who are their friends? So we use this social survey. So we don't have a background in I'm trained as an applied mathematician. So developing a social survey was a challenging, really challenging at the get-go. But we have fortunate enough to collaborate with a social scientist, and we were able to write a right question. So if you write a questions for social survey, it is very hard job. You can try it in your class. I tried the first time having a social survey and tried it in my class. Everyone interpreted the same question in a very different way. So there is a very right way, or there is a systematic way of writing these social survey questions to get an answer that you are looking for. And social scientists are skilled in that. But we as a mathematicians were not, but we learned from them, and we were able to not only write a questions from the scratch, get the data, clean the data, learn the statistical method, all this done by the undergraduate and graduate students. Again, the first thing what I was doing was building community of researchers, just like what Brian is doing is this community of researchers, which is not one-time deal. It's an ongoing process and continuous process where you can get help from different types. And that was an amazing experience. And so we were able to parameterize it for the first time for using our own data. Usually we look for other data in the literatures or collaborate with someone to give us a data. But this was the first time our students, who were mathematicians and some quantitative field at least, they were collecting data for social scientists, just like a social scientist, again, under the guidance of a social scientist. So the reason for bringing this project is the real problems are really complex. Just by doing mathematical equations and helping with that, are we training ourselves significant enough, sufficient enough to be in cutting-edge jobs in today's market? So my current work involved many things, and I felt like these were the very important key ingredients for a student's life to get an experience in. I'll talk about many other things that I've learned. In my dissertation, I also had work on neglected tropical disease. I am from India originally, and right now in Arizona, but originally from India. And my particular state affected by a disease called as leishmaniasis, which is deadly disease. and it is very bad, painful. It will causes disability also until a person dies. And so there is a reason why it is spreading. Neglected means it is neglected by practitioner, neglected by policymakers, neglected by pharmaceutical industry. And why is it neglected? Because there is no economic returns. Why is it not economic returns? Because it's affecting poor communities. If you are healthy, your environment are clean, you may not have that type of infection around you. So it is less. And so in 2012, this neglected tropical disease term was coined by WHO and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations and some other organizations who started this thing in 2012. But they, the progress has been going on after Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are pumping some money in that, and even other pharmaceutical and non-profit organizations are funding. But when I was in a college, I took my own passion. This was not really part of my dissertation, but I wanted to do something for the community that I'm from. And so I started working on a disease called as leishmaniasis, which is from India. But neglected disease means many of these diseases that you are seeing. This is protozoa disease, there's virus disease, there's bacterial disease, there's helminth disease. So, just wanted to give you, and it is affecting 1 in 6 in the world right now. I mean, so it's a huge burden of the disease, and that burden is carrying forward on our health insurance, for example, because health insurance take the whole population into account, and the prices rising in the prices. So if we reduce the case count in one country which is poor, that implication come down to the whole world in some sense. That is what my current work is. How can you capture the value of interventions in a broader sense, not in a localized sense? So for example, the vaccine help people who are taking the vaccine, but it also helps people who are not taking the vaccine. And that is called as a herd immunity, basically. So the ecological mechanism that I used in the neglected tropical disease is learning lots of knowledge on ecology. I was trained as an applied mathematician, and there was no sense of ecology. So I had to read myself on ecology of infectious diseases. And that's where I gained much of understanding about how things happen. It is not as simple as we think the disease spread. There's a host involved, there's a vector like mosquitoes, there is a pathogens. And the host, when we say host, there's a disease, leishmaniasis, that I'm talking about. It is spread by dogs, domestic dogs, but also in the humans. So if you control in the humans, that does not necessarily mean that you are controlling the disease, because there are dogs available as a host. So there's lots of features that goes in the modeling world that takes into account all these aspects and make the model of this is a differential equation behind the scene, key features of the real life system. Now, again, you don't have to put all the complexity, because complexity is very, very high for a real system. It depends on what is your objective and what is your goal. But here I'm showing these are the key features of the disease system that needs to be understood depending on the question that you have in mind. So the priceless life skills that I have learned during my educational training was communication skills, definitely. Writing, both as writing and written, writing and presentation. I learned on any topic at a very high level, regardless of difficulty. It was very difficult to know ecology, reading an ecology paper when I don't understand the language of ecology or infectious disease. So I read papers. And so that was a very critical thinking. Now, PhD, the work that I did in PhD, I don't use exactly the same thing, but what the skill set I learned there, I'm using it. And that is one needs to critical thinking. In my PhD or graduate program, I learn how to get any problem in a real life, how to get to the multiple options. Those options would have been very limited if I would have not had those experiences. Of course, programming and mathematical techniques. How do you conceptualize the real system? Because the real system is very complex. So which one to choose, which one not to choose? Those conceptualization. Completed a long-term project independently, how to work independently. If you feel challenged, where to find it, how to find it. Not only go to my advisor all the time, but how do you find it? But being also a part of a collaborative team. And of course, handling pressure and managing them. That is very, very key. Okay. I hope I'm not boring everyone with this background, and it is finding it interesting for everyone. So the second leg of my career was in the postdoctoral fellowship, where I worked in a applied department. I work in infectious disease department or global health department. That changes my perspective, way of thinking. I was not only thinking about mathematics anymore. I was also talking to people who had other things, who had particular cells in mind, or who had drug resistance in mind, or who has community level intervention in mind, and not about mathematical equations. Because we write many equations for learning process. That is good. But to be useful to that model, to be useful, you need to talk to the people who are practitioners, who are doctors, who are clinicians. And that is where the experience I had, amazing experience. I struggled initially to how to effectively talk to them. But when I leaving that place, I was understanding quite a bit of it. So I work on a project on PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis for HIV. So HIV was very high some 15 years ago in South Africa. Around about 1/4 of prevalence was in the population. So very high prevalence in that. And so this was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, this project, to understand this new medicine that they were trying to bring to the market, called as PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's like a vaccination, but it's not vaccination. It's a vaccination. That means, one of the problem with HIV is when the patient comes to the clinic or present for the infection, it is already too late. The window period has already gone past. The window period is very short for realizing the infection. And then when they come, the practitioner or clinician can only do management of symptoms or pathogen, but cannot cure it. And the window period is very short. So prophylaxis means you take the vulnerable population, take it as a pill every day in the morning. And the hope is that if a person gets an infection in future, that medicine is already there in the body and can fight the infection immediately. That's the idea. So, but you will say, oh, wow, this is a very good idea. So there's two problems to that. One problem is that you have to, first of all, find who to give. You can't just give it to the whole population. You have to give it to the vulnerable population. So in South Africa, we were doing it to the sex workers, for examples. They were taking it every day. So second problem is the prophylaxis medicine is also one of the same medicine as we give it and treatment. Now, a treatment for HIV. So if you are giving more medicine to the population, you are putting a lot of drug pressure in the population, and that is causing a lot of problem. Why? Because it generates more drug resistance cases. You don't want to bring a drug resistance cases. Why? Because you have taken 60, 70 years to develop that treatment or drug. And drug resistance will spoil the innovation or the treatment. So you have to be careful how much drug resistance get originated in it, while the impact of prophylaxis is, or the pill is, you are saving new infection to occur. Okay, so there is a benefit, but there is a trade-off in form of a drug resistance. So that trade-off is what we were studying using mathematical equations, but these were almost 2,300 equations. Why? Because there was different type of strains of HIV, different type of drug resistance therapies. There was different, as gender was there was sexual behavior were there were risk level were there. All these things taken together at a population level, there were 2,300 equations of that. So think about the massive parameters and the uncertainties coming from the parameters. So it was a massive problem, but again, it was suggested by clinician. As a mathematician, I will not do a model with the 2300 equation, because then you don't understand many things. But they have a real life data that was continuously coming in the system that helped in reducing lots of uncertainty associated with the region, because they have a large project going on due to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So the model had this structure: gender, sexual activity level, PrEP, or an ART. PrEP is prophylaxis. That is a pill that I'm talking about. ART is the treatment. Some people were getting treatment. Some people were getting prophylaxis. Health status, infection status was there. There was stage 1 infection, stage 2 infection. There are different till the person gets the AIDS. AIDS is a very last stage of the disease. And then HIV, drug sensitive, drugs resistance strain, and there was different drugs there. So there were lots of features that was there in that. So it was a coupled HIV equation for the whole South African populations, sexual active population, and we did a lot of things. So there was a results in that, and prophylaxis treatment was very helpful, but again, it was causing drug resistance. So we quantified that amount of drug resistance and amount of benefit. Next project I did in a global health at Case Western Reserve University, and I got a chance to go to Papua New Guinea because they were doing clinical trials on what? On lymphatic filariasis. Lymphatic filariasis is a disease like the one you are seeing on this picture. It is called elephantitis also. Elephantitis means elephant-like legs or extremities, hands, legs. So what happens is the lymphatic systems here get affected, and it stops pumping the lymphatic fluids in the body, and the lymphatic fluid get accumulated in extremities, and that is causing, it's a very disabling disease. People cannot work, people have difficulty in doing day-to-day life. This disease is spread by mosquitoes, and one of the treatment, there's no treatment for it, first of all. Once you have the disease, because what it does is it spoils the lymphatic systems. And once the lymphatic system is spoiled, no going back. So one way to prevent or stop this disease is by preventions. And what they do is they do mass treatment. The treatment, they spread it in the whole population, and they give it on an annual basis in a maximum population. Now, not all population takes it, because you can't just force the treatment on people due to superstitious belief, due to many reasons, comorbidity. So you try to do mass interventions, but in Papua New Guinea, they were unable to control the disease. They were able to control the disease in Middle Eastern countries very well by mass drug administration, annual mass drug administration, but they were unable to do it in Papua New Guinea. So we talked about it. It was the very starting point of the MDA to achieve elimination in the Papua New Guinea. It's an island country north of Australia, by the way. One of the untouched, it's really beautiful. It's so natural. It's no buildings, it's really beautiful country. And I want to show you in the map where it is exactly. So we worked on this thing using mathematical models, simple mathematical models, that how much of the population needs to be given the treatment to control to reach the elimination in Papua New Guinea. So that was the goal of it. And we worked with the Institute of Medical Research in Papua New Guinea, and it was first time me part of the clinical trials. So next is the academic professions. I moved from my temporary job, which is a postdoctoral fellow, to more of a faculty position. And I was a faculty at a couple of institutions at Northeastern University in Illinois University in Chicago, and then at Arizona State University. I was part of a mathematics cohort there, faculty cohort. And but I did number of things, and I want to talk about it. For example, we ran social surveys. I had an experience in the past, so I worked with one of my student and a high school teacher, Bashir, who's on the first picture, and we did a work on high school students. Why do they drop out from the school? And Chicago used to have very high dropout rates. So his school was in Chicago, south of Chicago, at that time at least. And so we use the surveys to get the data for the models. And his dissertation was on some of this work, and that led to a number of articles, including our work that is highlighted by BBC News. You know, it got a lot of press. Basically, you know, people used to think that single parents or parental guidance could be very useful in the reducing the dropouts, but it turns out that parental guidance are important, but until the peer influence increases beyond a certain level. So peer influence is very, very key. And so we understood the mechanism in which dropouts are happening at a high school level. So amazing project, practical project. And, you know, my research area was different, neglected tropical disease up till that point, and some social problems like alcohol drinking and cigarette smoking. But Bashir brought challenges from his own end. So I did not force my students to work on the problem of my own type. That was originated from his own ideas, but I helped him shape in a way that was got into such a high work and output. I started working also at the same time with a group called as Vipra, where we were trying to understand, these are the folks in my group, where we were trying to understand aircraft infections, especially the Ebola outbreak was going on at that time. Zika outbreak was going on, and we were worried around about 10 years ago. And so we wanted to see if people travel from one, how much of probability of infections lead to different flights, and what are the characteristics? Is it in the flight that is creating a problem? Is it an infection load? The way we board people. So we think particularly we were interested in boarding policies, like you know, for example, the American Airlines and Southwest, the boarding pass policies are very different. In Southwest, who come first goes in the Southwest, whereas American Airlines, it is the zone-wise boarding. So the question was, are these boarding policies generating more infection? Because in the flight, the air circulation system is very, very good. So the chances are occurring is less. But the most of the time, the infection chances occurs when people come close to it, which is a boarding policy or security lines, for example. And that is what we were looking at it particularly. And so our work also get highlighted in various press, including in the Forbes articles and other places. But so this was the work that we were understanding. Another work we worked on, this was during my faculty time, actually, mass killings. And there was some mass killings that was happening at that time. This is the work published in 2015. And here our work actually got a lot of press. And here we were using infectious disease ideas to understand, is there a contagion process in the mass killings? Anytime any event happen of mass killing or school shooting, does the media attention makes next event more or less likely to occur or not? And what is that if there is a contagion, how many days that contagion remain? Because if you see anything like happen, every news channel is showing it in a different ways. So we used the certain models to study that thing, and it was our work. We were interviewed in Morgan Freeman's shows called as Wormhole, Through the Wormhole. It was very big project at that time. all these experience that I was having in these real life projects, I can see the importance of those projects. I was summarizing it in a course that I kind of included in this at Arizona State University. I have a guest speakers there from economics department, from Center for Disease Control, from different areas, so that people can the students can see the importance of these problems and how these people look at it, the similar problem. So there was very features in it, and it was very popular at that time when I kind of implemented it in the population. Brian, how much time do I have still?
Oh, you have at least 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So next I would, now I was moving away from the academic due to multiple reasons, family issues and health issues. And I worked for industrial professions. Initially, I was really unsure where will I fit? But sooner or later, I realized that my skills are actually very helpful in many different industrial areas. Although I do have to learn many things by my own online, but I was able to maneuver myself in industry smoothly. And I got a chance to work with two companies, primarily and Precision HOR and IQVIA, and they are both in an area called as health economics and health policies. Now you will wonder why I'm, what do we do in that? I mean, health economics is same thing as infectious disease understanding, but then the economic layer is added on top of it. So I worked on a project such as the COVID was going on, the COVID at that time. So COVID, I mean, it's still going on. So, but COVID was very high in the peak, it started. So we were worrying about when the influenza season comes, then what will happen? It will explode. The cases will explode. And how will the the hospitals will kind of tackle those things? So we used, there was a rapid molecular test by a company came into market. Now, the main test for COVID, if you have taken a test, is PCR. PCR is a polymerase chain reactions test, which takes few days. At least that time it was taking few days. But rapid molecular test is less accurate, but more rapid. It takes 30 minutes to identify the infection, right? So we were worried about when the influenza season will come, how many COVID cases or how much of cases will occur and what would be the cost of rapid molecular test to implementing it. It was a new test in the market, basically. So we wanted to study the value or economic value of rapid. So we have behind the scene, there was a differential equation, disease spread for influenza and COVID. But on top of it, we were costing, okay, if a patient goes to a hospital, how much money it charges? Patient buys certain treatment, how much it cost, right? And we were adding it together to calculate economic value of it. So economic value is nothing, just a cost, and the benefit is reducing the infection or saving going to the hospital for an infected person. So how do you do the trade-off of cost and the benefit for doing the intervention? In this case, the intervention is rapid molecular test. So that's the trade-off we were studying in this work. Beside that, we did many things because I was entering in the industry at the time when the COVID was about to start. So we have different types of epidemic models, and none of them were able to capture the epidemic well. And it's still, we don't have tools, no matter where beyond 30 days, it's very difficult to capture, predict infectious disease patterns. Due to many reasons, due to pathogen evolution, due to human behaviors, and that causes very difficult. And for these two things, there is not a good models. pathogen evolution and human behavior. So we built different types of model for short-term prediction or short-term understanding. And you can see in this bottom line how the evolution of the modeling takes place. It was from the simple SIR model to super spreader models, to intervention or social distancing models, to mortality-related models, to models in the limited resources country models. So there was a transitioning happening from a very simple to more structured model or focused models for a certain question or research task. Well, Glenn did talk about it in a previous talk about epidemic model, and I don't want to go into deep, but I want to tell you one of the challenges, what I have seen in the history, I want to capture that trend, and that is history of the disease. So for example, COVID, we had some data, and if we plot it, we see some curves from there. And we wanted to capture that curve and then go about predicting in the future. So you need to capture that curve, and which is, so what Glenn was showing in his graph was dammed oscillations in a SIR model. So beyond that, I mean, I think that is a trend that if you look in the short term, and that is what we wanted to know, how can we generate a different patterns, high peak and then low peak, and then high peak and the low peak, and in a very different way. Can we build that structure, patterns of structure? So I just wanted to talk to you about simple ways. So simple first model in the first row, if you have S and I compartment, you will generate a logistic curve. Okay, if you have SIR model without demography, then you get a peak of one outbreak. If you have mortality, birth and death, as Glenn was pointing out, there's a dammed oscillation in it. So these are the patterns that you are observing based on what compartment or what is the structure that you are putting in the models. And that was one of the tasks of the modeler for the COVID at that time. Another task was, there were different interventions government were putting. The question was, which intervention will work and what time, how much duration we should implement, right? For example, closing down schools or closing down businesses, right? So to understand that thing, we were using a concept of tipping point or threshold behavior that we use in the bifurcation analysis. Okay, so tipping point, this Markham Gadwell book is a beautiful book to explain it. In a real life, there are tipping points happen all the time. So mathematically, how can you understand it? And that was the task as a modeler for us, capturing the shape and understanding the tipping point. Tipping point means you are in a bad shape right now, a lot of cases, and you want to bring it to the lower number of cases. We also did many things like connecting the scales, like clinical data to epidemiological data to intervention data. These are different levels of scales that we were. How do you connect those scales? We worked on that also, for example. I have a few slides here, and I want to just stress on one thing. The future of healthcare and medicines are changing now. It's now even technology companies are coming into it. There are certain things that we are focusing more, but as a mathematician, we can contribute a lot more in that. I don't want to go deep into this because there are very important aspects of the healthcare that I want to quickly go into this aspects and then end actually, because I'm kind of out of time here. Currently, I am working on few organizations, and including, I should have incorporated here also CME-ODE, because I feel I'm really passionate to see the work that Brian is doing actually, and his team is doing. And he doesn't have to do all these things, but he's amazingly sacrificing time and energy. And thank you, Brian, for making me part of it. And any help in the future, I would be happy to be part of it. Some of the institutions or some of the organization that I'm part of is the air travel infection, VIPRA on the left side. I'm working at CDC, one of the project for involving epidemics in in an ensemble of models that CDC is generating. I'm also part of World Health Organization supported in India health technology aspects, and also run something in Europe also. And last but not the least, at Illinois State University, there's an intercollegiate biomathematics alliance. And Brian, for you, actually, if there is anything that I could help from connecting it to that organization, I would be happy to do it in future. I was part of this program called as Mathematical Theoretical Biology Institute. It was a summer REU program, ran it for a number of years. Amazing program. It has changed. You see the left-hand side, the picture with a cohort of 1 year. There was almost like 100 participants at a given time with 20 to 30 faculty members, postdoctoral fellows to different levels of guidance and community building. And it was not only in the summer that community was built throughout the year. One of the important feature was something called as flipped hierarchy. What that mean was the questions or the problems was not given by the faculty, but were given from the choices of the students. And the reason that was because the students were more motivated to work with them. And our faculty goal was to only guide them. Now, we were also as a student there in that project because these were new problems. For example, someone is impacted by cancer in the family and they wanted to work on a cancer problem. We were okay with that. But we as a faculty has to learn quite a lot in the cancer if that is not my field, for example. So I did a lot of work in that. And I want to show these pictures. The mathematicians are very spectrum of type of mathematicians, from analysis, pure analyst on the right side, left side, to right side being a very, very applied mathematician who work with the community. So right now I am towards the right, but when I started my career, I was more towards the pure aspects. And there are lots of things between the things where you could find job opportunities. So I want to end it with this package deal that I'm talking to you about that I've learned is communication, of course, was very key in my aspect. Communication through community that I was part of networks that Brian is building also. Outreach effects, my research, writing, and presentation, of course, was not the only one though, but there were other aspects. But then also innovation that I did in the work that led me to think innovations in alcohol drinking, innovation in high school dropout rates for dropouts, and even in neglected tropical disease. And something entrepreneurship was very key, and that is a product development. You know, for us in academic, we less understand the product meaning. In industry, it is more. And most of our students are going in an industry, by the way. Right. And so the training has to be little bit in entrepreneurship as well. And that happens due to the community building, and having me, for example, here clearly shows Brian visions because I'm in industry right now mostly. And so I'll stop here, but I am very active also in social media, in putting my ideas there. And that's what the communication I'm talking about. When you put certain things in the social media, you have to be careful what to put, how to put, and technical things also, how easily you can put it. So I'll stop here. Thank you, Brian, very much. I may have taken a lot of more time than I'm.
Fine. We thank you very, very much. I'm tempted to fall back on my New York City cynicism roots and say, well, what have you done lately? But you've shared a life's experience, and we're so pleased with it. It maybe makes people think if they can get their students involved in some projects or activities or take risks themselves, no matter what stage in their career. Maybe just working for a company in town or trying to do something on a volunteer project. Obviously, you've been then drawn in deeper and deeper and deeper and produced quite well. Are there other questions or issues or examples that people want to ask Anuj about?
Well, and I will be happy to discuss with others through email, message me, please do message me. And, one thing that Brian just mentioned that, working on inspiring projects are very helpful, or projects which are practical. How you get in touch with that? Through the community. You have to be actively involved in the community, like Brian is working on. You have to participate in. You have to say, like I was I was in the talk by Anthony, or who was the first talk today in the afternoon?
Anthony, about Scudam.
Yeah, after Scudam. I can see that he is not only doing the research, but he's doing some outreach. Okay, he devoted some time to be part of it. So clearly, he is taking risk. He's going over and board than what is done in the classroom, for example. And he will be very successful. I can see that in future. So.
Yeah, I would never hesitate after my experiences in a first-year curriculum when I was in Indiana at Rose-Hulman. I would never hesitate to involve students in going into the community and helping out. There are many things that students can see, and they don't threaten employees. They don't come in with a clipboard of time study. They're just bushy-tailed students, and they can offer great service. One time we went to a cable company and they were extruding 1-inch copper into a 1/2 inch, 1-inch copper to a 1/4 inch, 1-inch copper, and their production was going down. And the students went and they just wandered around the factory asking questions, and they came back and they go, "It's embarrassing." And I said, "What do you mean it's embarrassing?" And they said, every time they did 1 to a 1/2 inch, then the next cable they pick up goes 1 to a 1/4 inch. If they just do all of the same 1 to a 1/2 in a row, they wouldn't have to recalibrate their machines every time. And I said, "You got to be kidding me. They don't do that." He goes, "No, it takes a 1/2 an hour to recalibrate the machine each time they change. And every time they do a job, they change." So they gave a presentation at the corporate group, and they slipped one slide where they suggested that they grouped them all together. And the guy who was the president of the company, after the presentation, he went, "Can you go back to slide 7? And they said, "Sure." And he goes, "Now, if we do them all the same right after each other, we can save time." That's an incredible idea, And so the students, imagine how they felt when they came away saying that was real money. And that wasn't deep mathematics, but it was at least scheduling, So you've obviously done that all your life yourself as a risk taker. Am I right? As a young person, no doubt.
Yeah, so definitely until you take a risk, and especially at the young age, it is very fruitful to be a risk takers. Now, it was not a random risk taking. It was risk taking under the guidance of community members like Brian, like my advisor, like my collaborators, for examples. After consulting with him, and even I take the risk, I was in continuously touch with it, and also I have to do my part. Just taking a risk doesn't help. I was learning from YouTube. I was learning from other sources, some of the things that I felt is very, very key, or someone else told me in the community that is very key.
Bev, you have a question?
Both. No, not really. I just want to say it was a wonderful overview, and the stressing the meaning of community and how important that is was excellent. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Bev.
We're very grateful. And when you try something, those of us who have, anything from helping the Girl Scouts schedule the routes for how kids do things, whatever it is you can help with, there's this great feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself. And even if it's nonprofit or if it's profit, and I think what Anuj has shown us is that great things can happen, and there's residuals. So thank you very much. We're going to stop now. Anuj is going to give the last talk of the conference. So we've saved the best till the end. Thank you, Anuj, again.